Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It's for me a pleasure to welcome you to this interinstitutional conference on blockchain opportunities and practical applications for EU expenditure control. This conference is part of a series that had been organized during 2017 and 2018 to raise awareness on the use of technology to transform audit, to stimulate the debate, and to explore and define what we call digital audit. It has been organized as part of the activities of the ECA Lab. The ECA Lab is a network of people, compromising colleagues having personal interest in big data, data analytics, text mining, blockchain, visualization, machine learning. A space is also a space for technologies. It's also a meeting place. It's a place for auditors where they can come and ask for advice and search for solutions to problems or questions they may have. It's, in fact, a learning hub. The conference is particularly important in the year of the CUR has devoted to the strategic foresight. I want to thank all the speakers for their interest in participating and their contributions. We are very grateful to Mr. Brinkat, that is today with us. Mr. Brinkat is our Maltese member of the European Court of Auditors. He's also a member of the Reflection Group on the Future Foresight of the ECA that will inspire us with his opening speech. Please, Mr. Brinkat, you can open our conference.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you all. There was a time when we used to ask ourselves, what is blockchain? We then moved on to a second question. Is blockchain really worth the bother? I think we have now moved on to a higher level, but still posing questions. Can we afford to turn our backs on blockchain in the dynamically changing reality that we are experiencing? And another question, is Europe itself well placed to embrace this potential game changer? By now, it is very clear that there is no doubt left that this disruptive technology is in the heart of the digital transformation. I am pleased and honored to see ECA choosing such a conference team at this timely moment, since we cannot afford any slippage from our part, as we gear ourselves to address the need to carry out the quantum leap that the private sector has long embraced. I emphasize this. It's not only embracing it, but it has long embraced it, which is primarily that of gauging and seeing the practical applicability of blockchain in audit. As the EU allocates more funds to this technological development, we cannot afford to sit back in the face of an innovation that is very likely set to challenge many existing business models. As many might be aware, in April this year, 21 member states and Norway agreed to sign a declaration creating the European Blockchain Partnership, known as the EBP, and also to cooperate in the establishment of a European blockchain services infrastructure, known as the EBSI, that is meant to support the delivery of cross-border digital public services with the highest standards of security and privacy. Since then, 4 more member states have joined the partnership, bringing the total of signatories up to 26. The EU is placing so much emphasis on blockchain because, in its own words, it may bring great improvements even for the European industry itself, from startups to large corporates, administrations, and most importantly, even citizens themselves. It is common knowledge that the next steps at the Commission level, at least at the exploratory level, is to explore the potential of blockchain, mainly in VAT reporting, taxation, customs, title and business registries, environmental, financial and company reporting, as well as health records management, clinical trials reporting, medicines registration, and also identity management. Since October 2017, in its conclusions, the European Council itself highlighted blockchain, along with artificial intelligence, as key emerging trends. Given the regular interactions between the European Commission services and the blockchain constituencies, including organizations that envisage to use such technologies and are also running proof of concepts or pilots, it is, in my personal view, imperative that we as ECA keep ourselves constantly abreast of the dynamics of such an ongoing process. We must give much attention to the importance of ideally becoming also key players, as Europe finds itself on the threshold of witnessing the emergence of a new generation of digitally enabled services. We cannot either ignore lightly the World Economic Forum's recent prediction that by 2025, which is not so far away, 10% of global GDP could be stored via digital assets on blockchain. I'm intrigued even more by the fact that this conference's organizers have honed in on a more specific subject linked to blockchain's use, the opportunities and practical applications in controlling EU expenditure. It is for this reason that I welcome the multidimensional approach that the keynote panelists will be addressing, the general EU and global contexts, various legal considerations, the member states' perspectives, the practical use of the technology involved, and most importantly, also the institutional aspect as well, because after all, we are another key EU institution. I must congratulate the organizers for also extending this invite to the conference to other external stakeholders, rather than limiting itself to a purely in-house exercise. As a member of the Course Foresight Task Force, I can assure that we intend to continue focusing in our endeavors on the need for a transition to innovative solutions based on emerging technologies. I thus wish you every success and hope that this conference will not be a one-off initiative, but part of an ongoing process that can, and in my opinion, should only gain momentum in the near future. I thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Brinkert. So now we move to our first speaker of the day. His name is Dimitrios Sarakis. Dimitrios is financial economist, financial market innovator, public speaker and author, with more than 13 years of experience in financial regulation. He's ranked among the 100 top influencers in the area of RegTech and blockchain, and he's frequent speaker in top-tier universities, including Stanford and MIT, international organizations, the World Economic Forum, and professional summits on fintech, RegTech, blockchain, and so on. He's the founder and CEO of the World Future Foundation, an international think tank that explores the impact of digital disruption in business, government, and society. He studied financial economics at Harvard University. It's for an honor to welcome Dimitrios on behalf of the European Parliament, presenting Making Blockchain Possible for Europe, view from the European Parliament. The floor is yours, Dimitrios.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation. Well, sometimes I believe that blockchain is the child of the last financial and economic crisis. Well, I believe that more or less institutions had a strong problem in identifying themselves as a trustworthy foundation, and probably this is what boosted blockchain to be so prevalent in the years after the financial crisis. Well, let me start by sharing a story with you. I'm coming from the European Parliament, working with a forerunner of blockchain technology in the European Parliament, Eva Kaili, and also the lady who boosted the demand for blockchain in the European Parliament, because if you don't push, why somebody should allocate a resolution entirely dedicated to a technology that nobody knows? Well, let me share a story with you. In 2015, we had the problem of the Greek financial crisis, And at some point, the Minister of Finance of Greece back then, you remember maybe his name is Yannis Varoufakis, posted a tweet saying that, okay, if the European Central Bank wants to push us, okay, we will change all the bank accounts of the Greeks into Bitcoin. So we filed a question to the head of the European Central Bank, and you know, more or less his replies are 10 lines or one paragraph. In this case, we had a 2-page reply in which Mario Draghi said that Bitcoin does not exist within Europe. It's something different. We cannot speak about it. He published his reply to us, and it became published exactly the same day when the European Court of Justice here in Luxembourg published a ruling saying that a payment made by Bitcoin should be tax exempt as if it was paid with money. So in the very same day, 2 different European Union institutions replied on the same problem in 2 distinct ways. So we saw that it's a very interesting topic, and we start pushing about blockchain, exploring the technology, and we managed to bring a blockchain resolution in the European Parliament last year, which was voted in the first plenary of the October 2018, a month ago, with the support of all the parties of the European Parliament, from the extreme right to extreme left. It's an issue of political entrepreneurship. We need always to create demand, and create demand in times of irresponsible hype, because sometimes blockchain enthusiasts lead us to the correct direction, sometimes to the wrong direction. Before talking to you about our political approach on blockchain in the European Parliament, as it was adopted a few weeks ago, I want to share with you my concern, because out there is no fundamental bibliography that can link the economics of blockchain and the practice of blockchain in a coherent way. We have many books of writers who want to exploit the hype, but there is no coherent economic program of blockchain. Let me start with that. Let me start with that. We decided in the European Parliament to start a program on blockchain economics, the economics of disintermediation. This is on the way. We see, of course, that there is a significant added value in blockchain projects, and blockchain promises to shift barriers and improve trust through disintermediation. Of course, as it happens in every economic subject, there is a microeconomic dimension, a macroeconomic dimension, and a political economy dimension. Let me briefly give you a general idea about the economic program of blockchain. First and foremost, the purpose of disintermediation economics, we don't call it blockchain economics, it's rather disintermediation economics, strives to achieve the reduction of transaction costs and the creation of efficient economies of scale and economies of scope. Also, digitization digitizes the process of delegated monitoring through limitation of informational asymmetries, such as adverse selection, moral hazard, agency frictions, and ex-ante contract management, and also limits the operational friction and increases liquidity. On the microeconomic implications of blockchain, we see, of course, that the costs drive down. The entry barriers for companies to the market are becoming smaller and smaller. We see the creation of niche market opportunities, and we also have automation of transaction and verification mechanisms through smart contracts. In terms of the macroeconomic dimension and the financial implications of the disintermediation economics program, we first and foremost need to stress that the adoption of digital technologies is a very significant element for the future growth of the developed economies like the European Union economies. We focus on the total factor productivity. And if you see studies of OECD and major academic institutions, you will see that investments made today in a digital technology do not provide, of course, a cash flow immediately, but they start providing significant cash flows and competitive advantages 7 years from the time the investment was made. Which means that the investments in digital technologies not made today are going to affect our growth profile in 7 years from now. The other very important dimension in macroeconomic terms is the streamlining of the financial services. We see several projects around the world of banks coming together and using common platforms and blockchain projects to streamline their banking transactions. And we also see that banks are not that ferocious opponents of blockchain technology. This is very, very interesting. Another dimension has to do with monetary policy. Of course, you know the hype of blockchain and how the central banks respond to this. The monopoly of issuing legal tender is very, very important. However, at some point, we need to be very practical. And in the Internet of Things environment, where digital money that cannot be encoded in a smart contract does not suffice for the implementation of the Internet of Things, we need more or less cryptocurrency to be encoded into the smart contract. So sooner or later, we can see if we can also develop here in the European Union something like a crypto euro. On the level of ICOs, also we have a big hype there, and also we see fraudulent behaviors out there. In Europe, of course, the fraudulent behavior on ICOs has nothing to do with what we see in China or in Korea. But still the problem is out there. But the instrumentality of ICO as a tool you can use to mobilize idle capital is of paramount importance for startups and small and medium enterprises. Well, I like very much those two equations. We see that analog institutions are composed by two things. Since 3000 BC, in order to have an institution, you need two items, trust and identity. And I really wonder what kind of institutions we are going to have in an era where trust is the code and identity is our digital fingerprint. In any case, how fast or how slow we proceed has a fundamentally political economy dimension. Because the political economy dimension we are going to adopt has to reply to three fundamental questions. How fast we change regulations, in how much detail we have to intervene, and how wide this regulatory intervention should be. How fast? Well, this is the famous Rogers S-curve in which we see how fast technology is adopted by the market. I will not spend a lot of time here, but I just want to show you that from moving from few users to make it mainstream technology, it might be that steep or that steep. Well, I prefer to have a steepness like that. In artificial intelligence would be something like that. But, well, it's very important to move fast to the full capacity of blockchain. But how fast we can really go? There is a trust dimension here. You remember in 1989, Francis Fukuyama published his famous book on the end of history. It's not just the end of history, it's the end of history and the last man. The last man is the very important term here. Last man is a Hegelian Marxist theoretical assumption which says that human beings cannot be improved with much social engineering. And according to the idea of Francis Fukuyama, we reached the point that the liberal man is fixed. Blockchain is here to challenge this concept, because suddenly we have a new source of trust. And the societies are built between two very fundamental ideas of trust. The first are societies that base their trust in family, like Italy, Mediterranean people. And we also have sources of trust based on the communitarian egalitarianship, like Germany, England, United States. How fast we are going to proceed to a full-fledged blockchain-proof ecosystem depends on what kind of trust the society can accept. So my prediction is that northern cultures will adopt the blockchain environment much faster than southern cultures. Having said all these details regarding our political economy and economic program on disintermediation economics, let's talk now about the regulatory principles. You know, when you open a Word document, you have a white paper, and you need some concrete elements in order to start writing. We have three regulatory principles in the European Parliament regarding blockchain. The first is innovation principle. Innovation principle means that we cannot over-regulate a technology which is still evolving and with uncertain impact. This has nothing to do with light touch and heavy touch regulation. This has to do entirely with practical considerations of how to allow things to be developed. And of course, things to be developed while we preserve the reputation of the regulator and the institutional certainty that engulfs the regulator. The second thing is about technology neutrality. I very often hear in the fora that how we are going to regulate blockchain. No, we will not regulate a technology. We will regulate the uses of the technology and those who use the technology, not the technology per se. And this is the concept of technology neutrality. And the third item is about the business model neutrality. This is the most difficult and politically charged item here. Business model neutrality means that it is not the business of the regulator to decide which business model will survive. This is the consumer's job to decide. This is the market's job to decide. If we can have a bank providing services and the people want to go to the bank to do their job through an intermediary, let them do it. But if they prefer to use another channel to do their banking everyday work, let them do it. It's not the regulator who is going to advance a certain business model over another. On the specifics now of our blockchain resolution in the European Parliament, the problem was that blockchain, for the majority of the people, is all about Bitcoin and ICOs. Well, it is not. Blockchain is not just a technology. Blockchain is an infrastructure, much wider than a technology. And we made clear to the colleagues from the European Parliament that when we are talking about blockchain, we are talking about an enabling source of trust, which is going to affect a wide range of sectors, including energy sector, healthcare, supply chains, education, transportation, creative industries, financial institutions. Another dimension has to do with the building of a vibrant and secure ecosystem. I'm very proud on the Article 79 of our blockchain resolution. European Union must be the global leader in the era of blockchain and artificial intelligence. And this is our political motivation as well. Just like United States was the global leader in the era of internet, the first machine age, European Union is able and possible to be the global leader in the era of the second machine age. And building a European blockchain ecosystem is the most instrumental part of this job. Talking about a secure and vibrant ecosystem, we are talking about the data protection environment, we are talking about smart contracts, operational challenges, cybersecurity. Well, I don't want to go in detail in every step, but for example, in GDPR, we are talking about to which extent blockchain is GDPR compliant. The market people would say the opposite. To which extent GDPR is blockchain compliant? I will not get involved into this discussion, but I will just invite you to think of a triangle. In this triangle, we have in the one angle the privacy, on the other efficiency, and on the other security. The closer you are to one of those angles, you are more and more fundamentalist. But the GDPR author, in his spirit, never said that blockchain or any other technology is closer to privacy, to security, or to efficiency. Everything is somewhere between. So saying that blockchain is fundamentally GDPR non-compliant, I think it's not very, very correct. On the smart contracts is a very huge discussion. I know it's a session of this panel later. Let me move. Blockchain is also a reinvention of public infrastructure. We are here in the Court of Auditors, which is a fundamentally public interest institution. This was one distinct part of our blockchain resolution. We wanted to clarify that we can use blockchain technology for tax purposes, for the improvement and streamlining of public services in order to create value for the citizens in an exponential way. Well, next steps. First, we have the adoption of the blockchain resolution in the European Parliament with this fantastic majority. We are going to have on the 20th of November, a blockchain event in the European Commission. On the 26th of February, Commissioner Gabriel and Eva Kaili are going to put together everything which was done so far, and they will announce the blockchain policy of the European Union. We have a vote in the industry committee this week on the uses of blockchain in the improvement of international trade functions. And also on Monday, we had the vote of the crowdfunding regulation, which addressed the topic of ICOs and invited Commission to provide a dedicated framework on crypto assets. I had the opportunity to share with colleagues a little before that money is very instrumental. And in order to show how dedicated Europe is on the blockchain, it's not just a rhetoric, it's also budget lines. We have already proposed in the European Parliament many projects, many pilot projects on blockchain, and also we have proposed the crypto assets pilot projects in which we will try to explore the uses for financial purposes. And also we are very proud to see very essential parts of the European Union budget going to blockchain operations. Let me go a little bit back again to this diagram, and I want to conclude with this. Well, it's very important to move to the peak as fast as possible. It's not possible to happen with artificial intelligence, but going to the top is not that difficult. It's like using electricity. If you decide to have electricity in your house, you can use it. Blockchain more or less is the same. Because it's not about blockchain per se. Blockchain is a system of thinking. And it's very interesting to see what kind of blockchain-inspired innovations we are going to have by 2030. So reaching at this point right now, in the peak, it will enable us to start thinking faster about it. And we have a huge opportunity because United States, because of the problems they have, do not very much pay attention to this kind of things. And to conclude, I would like to give a picture to you. Of course, you remember the fantastic statue of David in Florence, of David. Well, it's not the moment that beats Goliath. It's not the moment that he prepares himself for the battle. It's the moment who has decided what is the next step, and it is the moment that he is completely uncertain about the outcome and the efficiency of this step. This is exactly the moment we are right now in the European Union. We made the step. We are a little bit uncertain. We are prone to spend some money on that. But like David, we are going to have a good hit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dimitrios. Very inspiring. Is there any question after listening to you? If no, you can, yeah, please.
Hello, José Luis from the European Parliament. Also early adopter of blockchain technology and enthusiast. In your speech, you raised a lot of interesting points. I would like to focus on the regulation. You mentioned that maybe it's not a good idea to regulate the use of blockchain or the users of blockchain too early. That is interesting.
We need from the very beginning to have a clear view of what kind of changes blockchain brings to the actual operations and regulate the users and the uses, not the technology per se.
That's one of the main points. So it's in that case, I believe we agree. Also, I noticed in the private sector, one of the main concerns for them to be able to develop is to have a clear framework, legal framework, to be able to develop on the technology. So if we are on that, that's especially where the European Commission and the European Parliament can help. Not so sure about financing directly projects, but clear legal framework for private companies to develop could really position the European Union in the first line of the technology. So if you agree with that, I'm happy to hear that and that you are advising in that sense to our members.
Let me only note that, well, going very fast to lock a certain type of technology is not always very wise. Let it a little bit evolve and then understand what kind fits better to your purposes. We see, though, historically, that wherever we have very productive innovation, it's the moment that market did its part of the job and the government sector stepped in and locked a dominant prototype. This created huge, not only regulatory, but institutional certainty, to every sort of institution, market, and so on and so forth. And the only way to do this is through use cases. And I'm very confident on the use cases European Union has selected.
Thank you. Is there any other question for the moment? If no, I propose that we continue and we are going to accumulate questions for the end of the session. So we move forward now, and now we are going to receive to Tadek Slapnik. Tadek is principal at the European Blockchain Hub and former State Secretary in the Cabinet Office of the Prime Minister of the Republic of Slovenia. He is initiator and signatory of the Field the Future Declaration, Initiative Blockchain Europe, actively involved in promotion, development, and smart regulation of distributed ledger technology at national, European, and global level. He will present to us blockchain and the Sustainable Development Goals. Tadek, the floor is yours.
I will try to continue with the thing that were explained just before, with a story from quite small member state, Republic of Slovenia, where we started, what was the reasons, what we did, and where we believe that the using and the development of blockchain technology should go. And that it will not be just the, of course, really important goal that we have to be global front runners as a European Union on the field of blockchain technologies, but to know what to do with that. We strongly believe that we should use this technology at achieving global sustainable development goals. But how we came to that, I will tell you in following 20 minutes. It was in 2016 when Slovenian government was held a quite important national conference speaking about where Slovenia is in the fourth industrial revolution, which technologies do we have, what we are lacking, and where we have some powers that we should be aware of. It was also in the same time that it's from 2014 actually Republic of Slovenia is in the transition from linear into the circular economy. And yes, we were trying to find the answers, which technologies we could use to make this transition. And it was on these debates that we saw that we are quite average on most of the technologies, but that we are really good on the field of blockchain technologies. But not we as a government, but actually entrepreneurs from Slovenia. We found out that it was that we have already in 2011, 2012, really a lot of early adopters among entrepreneurs. That out from that, we had in already 2016, I think, few of the first blockchain companies issuing on European level their ICOs, a lot of knowledge already gathered, and we decided we will use this knowledge, this capacity, boost it to achieve our goal, transition from linear into the circular economy. How to do that if you have really a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of knowledge on the side of, let's say, private sector, but really lacking the knowledge into the governmental one. We decided to organize together with all stakeholders, we call it Slovenian Blockchain Meetup. We call actually all the representatives from the ministries, from the entrepreneurs, and out from that we build up initiative Blockchain Slovenia. We decided, as now we were speaking on EU level, that we will really try to boost, to develop the technology and to really make a space of collaboration on that to involve all stakeholders. We find out that out from 2017, Slovenian startups, they gathered, I think, 5% of global ICOs. It was approximately 50 blockchain companies gathering, I think, 250 million euros investment, and they start really to, not just on the financial sector, but on different, let's say, vertical pillars of economy, already developing the new business models. And that's why we, as Republic of Slovenia, we decided that we will try to become a kind of country where the blockchain startup ecosystem will be supported. With the European Commission in October 2017, we decided to do a kind of initiative that we have first on national level. On EU level, we organized first European blockchain meetup in October 2017, when more than 600 participants from 12 member states from all, let's say, different fields of backgrounds gathered, and to prepare a declaration. We call it Field the Future Declaration, Initiative Blockchain Europe. This declaration then we sent, of course, to all the commissioners, the European Commission, we tried to be as fast as possible to highlight that if we would like to be a front runners, we have to move fast. Usually entrepreneurs from blockchain space, they are telling, 1 month in blockchain comparing to 1 month in real time, it's 1 to 8. Everything moves really fast. That's why also activities from the government should adopt to this. Of course, we then as a government, together with our entrepreneurs, we share our knowledge. We were present at World Economic Forum. Our government went to have direct discussion with 20 blockchain companies to start to understand that it's not just a lot of money invested, but that it's actually a lot of knowledge, a lot of potentials that we were facing for the first time in 20 years of independence of Slovenia, that really good, let's say, engineers from abroad start to come back to work in Slovenia because they have potentials. We are really happy that we were part of European Digital Day on 10th of April. It was mentioned already today, where all these initiatives came together. It was the signature of 22 ministers signing blockchain partnership on European level. And just the following day, we organized European Blockchain Summit in Slovenia, together again with the European Commission, with consensus and with the most front-runner European member states, focusing particularly on the field of smart regulation. In that time, as we know, it was, let's say, hype already down, and it was focusing how after that we will be able to prepare the regulation, how we will be able to follow all the technological development with the, let's say, smart regulation. And on that conference, we also decided that we will make a proposal to all member states, to companies, to all, let's say, stakeholders on European level, that it's not just competing among each of the member states, who will have a first law, who will do the best solution on national level, but here we would really like to have a, let's say, European collaboration. What we did in year 2018, the most important thing was that we published the ICO guidelines. We did it together with the blockchain companies. We prepared national action plan of supporting development of the blockchain technologies. We are preparing together with the Republic of Malta and Germany first European research infrastructure consortium Music Now project. It will be a platform allowing music rights holders that they will be able to utilize their author rights directly using blockchain technologies. But also in the half of this year, we were establishing together with the companies from all over the Europe, together with a few European member states, European Blockchain Hub. In the end of this year, our Ministry of Economy will propose also the law about supporting development of blockchain technologies. Today it was already mentioned that in the history the development of the technologies moved our economies, boosted them, and you can see this slide how, of course, first we have centralized, then decentralized. Now with blockchain technologies, distributed ledger technologies, we are moving even into the direction of distributed economies. And if we have these, let's say, potentials, then we strongly believe that using these technologies, we should really have in mind why, and we believe that global sustainable development goals are the reason that, and also the focus of it. And that's why we, together with UNCE, then also United Nations, started with the initiative called Blockchain for SDGs, where we are trying to define already some concrete cases. For example, HashNet protocol is the one who is moving out from mining, which we all know that it's quite energy consuming, to new protocol, proof of stake, which is much faster, also not energy consuming. We are facing, for example, platform Sun Contract, who is allowing peer-to-peer energy markets using blockchain technologies. We have project Data Found answering a lot of questions also related to monetization of personal data, and also answering the question of GDPR directive. We have also some already attempts of doing platforms for more decent work using also blockchain technologies, but also AI. And we collect this together with the, as I mentioned, UNCE, United Nations Commission for Economic Development from Geneva, where they in April published the first proposal of white paper, Blockchain for Sustainable Development Goals. More than 100 countries and more than 100 specialists are participating on preparing the white paper. Generally, they are focusing on concrete activities already done either by the countries, either by the entrepreneurs, showing how using of blockchain technologies can boost and realize sustainable development goals. It was in July this year that together with UNCE we organized one global workshop at the headquarters of United Nations in New York, focusing about how blockchain technologies we can use for transformations toward more sustainable and resilient societies. And out from that, we even straighten these global activities that we have to invite all stakeholders globally. Of course, here Europe is important. European Union is an important leader to collaborate on first mapping, but then also finding the way how really we should do to support the development at achieving SDGs. I was really happy that OECD, which I think that it was quite conservative on the field of recognizing blockchain technology, actually organized the policy forum in Paris in September this year. And again, it was, I think, more than 90 countries presented, but also mostly the representatives of European Union member states, showing where we are. And there again we call up for the initiative, let's focus, let's collaborate together, but again with the focus to use the blockchain technologies for achieving sustainable development goals. On the global scale, on the UN level, it's Nobel Prize winner Dr. Muhammad Yunus, which is also one of the 15 SDGs advocates at UN level, that he established the Global Committee for achieving SDGs using the power of youth, social business and new technologies. And in the conference this July, this September in New York, we actually launched the initiative to gather all the actors globally who are either experts on the field of new technologies, either are using social business models, either they're finding the way how to include youngsters in a lot of activities going on at achieving SDGs. To conclude, to tell what is the main goal of European Blockchain Hub, it's actually trying to become multi-stakeholder platform involving governments, companies, academia, civil society, together in one organization. It's organized as a cooperative with the aim first to advocate the importance of development, second to provide capacity building among the governments, among the companies, among the academia, and to initiate and realize concrete projects. I mentioned music now, ERIC project, that it's one of them that it's already in pipeline, but we have also a lot of others that we are first identifying and then getting all the knowledge, all the power together to implement them. We are now just in the between of Euro-Asian tour, blockchain for SDGs. Here I would highlight that really soon Asia find out that, of course, partnering with European Union could be really beneficial for them, but also, as we know, the big market that they have, the let's say importance of European Union in their markets, really it's beneficial also for European Union, and that's why we are organizing a tour of 20 countries. In each of the country we are organizing a conference, blockchain for sustainable development goals, where we are putting again together governments, again together concrete, let's say projects, concrete blockchain companies who are already walking the talk, mapping them, putting them together in order to make a kind of really network of the activities that are on the development phase, but also to map the obstacles. We have different obstacles either in different countries, either in different use cases of business models. These we would like really to map, to understand, and of course to use it and to share it with our really progressive legislators in European Parliament, European Commission, but also globally with the United Nations, because on the end we strongly believe it's a global use case, it's a global potential of the technology. That's why we should really involve all global actors in our activities. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tadek, for sharing with us all those things that are happening about blockchain all around the world. So is there any question now? First question? If no, we move forward and we will consolidate of the questions at the end. Yes, please.
Sorry to be the same person, but I'm very interested in everything that has been discussed today. You mentioned different achievements of your organization in the last months, and also the objective of the organization. Would you mind to give us an overview on the roadmap in short and middle term of activities that you're going to do?
Okay, still it's everything also on the web page, but for example, tomorrow we have event in Berlin. Next week we are in Vienna. On 13, on 15 we are in Madrid. On 19 we are in Stockholm. But then we are moving back to Asia. I'm not having but I think 5 more events from Kuala Lumpur to India to South Korea. But what is important that when we will conclude the tour, we will organize a global blockchain forum in April on 10th and on 11th. On that one, we would really like to summarize all of that, but it will be a lot of activities also in the between.
Any other question? Okay, I know that for most of you, blockchain is still a mystery. And I have to recognize that it was the case for me until maybe February this year. But suddenly, in the last week of February, different elements, planets, I don't know, and by chance I met 3 different people and I read one document, and something made click in my head. And suddenly I understood what it was about, and I thought maybe we can find something for audit. Of course, I was not the one, I was alone with the idea, I was with the team, but the concept of control by design came to my mind, and then together with the team, we thought, let's materialize it, let's be able to show to our auditors what we are talking about and what could be the potential use for audit. So I have the pleasure to arrive to this part of today's conference because it's where when we are going to share what we did for audit at the Court of Auditors. Allow me to be proud of the result, and I would like to introduce you first the main speaker, that is going to be Mirko. Mirko is auditor at the European Court of Auditors. He's working at the Chamber 3 and contributor to the ECA Innovation Laboratory, what we call the ECA Lab. Having always been passionate about technology, he studied computer engineering and management of innovation. He started his career in the private sector, where he worked in the field of mobile internet services. In 2012, he joined the European institutions. And in 2015, he moved at the European Commission, and in 2015, he moved to the ECA. Following his system in distributed layer technologies, in 2016, he started a technology watch activity and animated the ECA blockchain group. In 2017, he joined the ECA Lab, where he has been developing the string of activities related to blockchain, including building and sharing expertise, defining use cases, and prototyping. I think that I'm going just to leave it here. You are going to present us, and then we are going to move to the demo, and we are going to present the rest of the speakers. Is that okay for you? Okay. It's going to be combined since the beginning? Then I continue with the story. That is the part of the ECA. The part of the ECA is Mirko. But then we have other things. If we were talking about audit, we need to have different elements. And one element we wanted to have in the picture is the beneficiary. So we did our experiment contacting directly with one of the beneficiaries that today is here present, coming from Greece. And the beneficiary we are talking about, and I'm going to summarize because you all received the notes on the CB, and I love the way the notes start saying that our beneficiary is Angelos Iatridis, and Angelos is the artist behind the worldwide Ogor Alpha Estate wines in Amindeon, Greece. So somebody that is producing wine and define himself as an artist. When I saw that, I thought it's the best thing we can say when introducing somebody. As a descendant of a fifth-generation pastry family, he inherited the passion to give pleasure to people's life. Of course, he did many other things. He got a diploma in France on enology. He was working in Colmar and in different chateaux. But I think we are going to leave it there, and I want to thank you for having come to Luxembourg to share with us as one of those beneficiaries to European funds what is your experience. He's there together with Kostas Nico, and Kostas Nico is a business consultant since 2014, and he is the one working with Angelos on managing and helping on the financial aspect of his company. He's also going to share his experience with us. But nothing of this will have taken place without having the technology aspect. So we were not able ourselves to do nothing with the technology. We just have an idea, and we need the technologist, the person that was there that was going to help us. And that person is Denis Abrilionis. I know Denis since he was at the court working as a consultant when I arrived 10 years ago. Then he disappeared from the picture. But Denis is a serial entrepreneur active in the software industry since 2001. As the founder of Compellio, he assists private companies and public organizations in utilizing blockchain to streamline compliance and maximize efficiency. Compellio's latest product, the Compellio Registry, leverages blockchain technology to create solutions that deliver business added value in a variety of industries, including government, finance, and agriculture. He's a member of the Luxembourg Business Angel Network. He holds a PhD in computer science from the University of Grenoble in France and has worked as visiting scientist at the Software Engineering Institute, Carnegie Mellon University from the United States. I want to welcome all of you and Mirko, and now floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I'm very glad to see a full room for this blockchain conference, and I'm even happier to be here to present you something concrete. A working prototype, a tool that can really help us have an idea of how we could use blockchain for our own core business. I'm going to give a quick introduction about the proof of concept. I'm going to then explain a little bit what is this blockchain we are all talking about and how we can use it as a notarization service. This is the key point. We will have some technical considerations together with Denise. And then we will move really to the business. So we will see how this ECA Registry works, this prototype that we built, and what are the benefits that we expect from it. And afterwards, we will also hear the perspective of Alpha State, which is the EU beneficiary that volunteered to help us with this project. Just to set the context, we started talking about blockchain here in 2016 with an article that was published by our colleague Christine. And since then, we have started acquiring knowledge, expertise, sharing this knowledge with the others, and raising awareness in the house. We had 2 big presentations in this room last year, and then we started also working hands-on on the technology. We did some prototyping. We created an ECA coin for educational purposes, and we have shown it during the training day. And in 2018, as Magdalena said, we decided to step up and try and build something real that can be used for our core business. The project started in March and lasted 4 months until June, and the objective was clear. We wanted to explore practical applications of blockchain in the field of audit. We had some requirements, though. We wanted to obtain quick results, because 1 month in blockchain, as it's been explained, is like 8 months in the real world. We wanted to show concrete use cases. We want to have an intuitive tool that would rely on the existing public blockchains, and we wanted to ensure interoperability with the rest of the IT system. Before I show you the final result, let me do a step back and give you some basic elements about the technology and its use as a notarization service, so that we level the playing field also for the people in the room who do not have familiarity with the technology. If we want to give a quick definition, a broad definition would be that blockchain is a distributed digital ledger, a database, that can record economic transactions between 2 parties in a verifiable, permanent, and secure way without the need of trusted authorities or intermediaries. So how do you get rid of the intermediaries? Well, you have strong public key cryptography that guarantees the integrity and security of the data, and a decentralized structure that makes it resilient to attacks. I've highlighted in the slide 4 keywords. These are 4 key properties of a blockchain ledger, and I'm going to give you some more details about those. We say that the ledger is distributed. So what does it mean? Instead of having one centralized database in the basement of a trusted institution, we have hundreds, thousands of copies of the same database that are spread around the globe and are operated by actors that do not even know each other. They do not need to trust each other because they use a protocol, and the different instances of this database that we call nodes are synchronized automatically with a consensus mechanism. We say that the ledger is verifiable. Every time you add a transaction, well, the initiator has to sign this transaction with his private key to demonstrate that he is the legitimate owner. And then this transaction is sent to all the other nodes of the network, and they have to approve it. Only if the majority of the active nodes approves the transaction, it is then added to the database. Otherwise, it's discarded. We have full transparency in the database. Cryptography is not used to hide information, but it is used only to protect it from tampering and to make it resilient. Any actor can download the entire database, the entire ledger, and check whatever is happening on that. It's fully transparent. We say that also the ledger is permanent, because once you add a piece of information to the database, you can never modify it or delete it anymore. So it's written in stone, it's immutable, and the database looks like an ever-growing list of transactions. So whatever you write will stay there, and this is a key element. We say also that another key property is security. With a centralized database, an attacker would have just one target, the famous database in the basement of a bank, for example. In a blockchain environment, in order to be able to corrupt or destroy the database, the attacker would need to overpower all the other nodes or take control of at least 51% of them. Take into account that in a big network like Bitcoin, you can have 10,000 nodes. So it's a colossal effort. It's an order of magnitude more difficult than it is now. So if you want to use other words, if you want to see it in another way, blockchain is a machine that builds trust in the data among different stakeholders. So you move the trust from the institutions, from the actors, to the data, to the infrastructure. So you trust what is there because you have a stake in it. You can verify it, you know how it works. And so basically you have a common state, a common truth that everybody can rely upon. But there are, of course, some drawbacks. There is a cost in this. A blockchain database is much less efficient than a classic database, and it can store very little data. If you think about it, if you have 1,000 copies of the same database, when you write a piece of information, you have to write it 1,000 times. If you validate it, you have to validate it 1,000 times. So it's heavy, and the machine is really computationally costly. So when do you use it? You need to think about when it is really useful. The classic use case is cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, in the end, was the first real application of blockchain. But here at the court, we decided that cryptocurrencies were not interesting for us, so we discarded this one. We didn't look into it. Smart contracts are another interesting application, and we will have a presentation later about the legal implications of them. But we actually were quite interested in another application, and it's the notarization service. We decided to focus our efforts there because this was the most promising for our field, for audit. There are many other applications, but I will not mention them now. So how do you build a notarization service using blockchain? Here I need to introduce a little technical detail, so bear with me for a second, because this is a key element if you want to understand how it works. I need to introduce the imprint or hash of a document. The hash function is a mathematical procedure. So it takes an input, for example, the content of the document that you see there in the slide, applies a mathematical calculation, and gives you as a result an alphanumeric code, short code, like the one you see in the slide. Now, this function is deterministic. It means that you can run it as many times as you want, and you will always have the same code as a result, provided that you don't change the source data, so you don't change the document. But if you change even a comma in the document, and then you try to run the same function, you will not only get a different code, you will get a completely different code. So this is a very easy system to spot whether or not a document has been altered. You may not know exactly what has been done, but you have the mathematical certainty that the document has been altered. Now, take this imprint, place it on a blockchain. What happens? Well, it inherits the properties of the blockchain. So it becomes a permanent, time-stamped, and verifiable record that is there as a reference for any future point of in time. So let's say in a hypothetical scenario that the document owner takes his document, runs the hash function, obtains the imprint, and stores it in a block in a blockchain. He gets a timestamp, and it's permanent. It will remain there. 2 years later, an auditor receives the same document in PDF. Well, it's quite easy to alter a PDF. So how do you know, how are you certain that this document is authentic, that it has not been modified later on? What can give you this guarantee? Well, you can run the same hash function, generate the same imprint, and compare with what was recorded in the blockchain at the time. If they match, you have the mathematical certainty that it is the same document. So you can consider it as original, as a paper original if you want. If they don't match, you cannot trust the document, so you need to do some additional research. So this is the theory. Now, when you want to do it concretely, well, you need to consider that blockchain is a very complex set of technologies. So the screenshot that I've added there comes from a block explorer. An explorer is basically a tool that allows you to go through the database, select a transaction, and check the information about the transaction. But as you see, it's a list of codes, numbers, timestamps, and names that very few people can understand. So developing a solution on blockchain requires skills and requires a long time. As I said before, we wanted to have quick results, so we partnered with Compellio. And that's how we use their technology as a jumping-off point. So maybe, Dennis, would you like to make some additional technical considerations?
Thanks, Mirko. So I'm going to continue from the previous slide from Mirko. As Mirko said, the very first case that has been implemented in the blockchain space, it was the possibility to move coins from one wallet to another. So Bitcoins or Ethereum moving. And of course, with smart contracts, we went a step further, allowing to create own coins and do some of the things that are what we call in the cryptocurrency space. The issue with this is that all of that lives inside the blockchain infrastructure. So, so all the smart contracts, all the wallets, all the cryptos remain inside the blockchain infrastructure. One of the issues that we're having, especially here with audits, is that all the assets that you're actually manipulating, all the things that you do, are outside the blockchain, are documents, decisions, photos, whatever is an evidence for audit. That's why we're focusing on a solution where the importance is to, how can I say that in the best way, to make sure that everything that exists on the internet can still be used in the context of blockchain. Which means that you have document management systems, you have ERP systems, you have a huge investment that you already made in your IT infrastructure, and this should still remain. If we come with a solution, say blockchain is the next revolutionary thing, and everything that you do, you have to discard it and just switch to blockchain, it won't fly. So the challenge that we have, which is a very big technological challenge, is to make sure that the blockchain can sit next to all your existing investments in IT and continue working with what you already have. And that's what we have done, and we collaborated with the Court of Auditors for this. Now, one consideration is also the following, is that not only the technology is important, but also in terms of the human capital of software engineering, it's very important. And here are some statistics. We are around 21 million developers in the world. However, only around 10,000 have skills to develop smart contracts. So there's no way that this thing can scale, okay, if we go pure blockchain development. So the thing that is also very important is that in terms of software engineering skills, on the way that we are developing software, we must still continue using the best practices that come from the pre-blockchain era. Therefore, the characteristics that seem to us important, and we corroborated that with the Court of Auditors, it's that first of all, what we need is a global audit trail infrastructure that cannot must put things in immutably, which means that you cannot fool the system. The second thing is how long we have the preservation of documents. So in the context of databases, the cycle of technology is around 15, 20 years, 30 years even. In the context of blockchains, because of the mining that is still going on for Bitcoin and Ethereum, we have 120 years ahead of us until the blockchain, the Bitcoins are exhausted, which means that we can still continue having, in 100 years ahead of us, references on hashes that we put on blockchain, which no other technology can support. The particularity that we have built in our case is that you don't need wallets, you don't need Ethereum, you don't need to have Bitcoin as the European Court of Auditors to run the system. So everything is hidden behind the technological infrastructure. And of course, you can continue using the same IT tools that you use today in order to integrate with the blockchain. And of course, because we are running on public blockchains, there is no need to invest on any blockchain infrastructure. Now, in terms of the technology, so this thing is production ready, so we can go immediately into production, and we can integrate with existing systems. We don't need to have all the blockchain complication about smart contracts or cryptocurrencies. You don't need to have your own blockchain infrastructure. And the thing that is very important is that we can scale and have the same power as the traditional architectures when we use blockchain systems. There's a little bit of technical challenge, but we managed to solve that, so that's where we are today.
Okay, so now we can move really to the business, to the actual tool, and we can start seeing how it works. Well, the result of the proof of concept was a registry, the ECA Registry, that is able to create imprints of the documents, of the digital artifacts that you manage in your daily life, and store these imprints on public blockchains. It writes on 4 different public blockchains, just to be sure. And it also keeps the link between the original document, the imprint, and the metadata that characterize the document, because a document without metadata is not searchable, cannot be recognized. It's important to mention that this tool acts as a middleware between our IT system and the world of blockchain. Now, another key point is the fact that the documents can be confidential. So the documents are not stored in blockchain. They are kept in a private cloud of our choice. And only the imprint of the document and metadata is on a blockchain. Now, it's mathematically impossible from the imprint to come back to the original document, so basically there's no risk for the confidentiality of the documents. There is another aspect that is really interesting, is that you can register your documents through this system and then share your registrations with another actor. For example, a beneficiary of EU funds can record the documents and then share them all with the European Court of Auditors. And this is a GDPR compliant process. So they own their documents and they voluntarily make them available. With this tool you can do mainly 3 things. You can prove the existence and the integrity of a document that has been previously recorded on a blockchain. You can prove that a document was produced before a certain deadline, because everything in the blockchain is time-stamped, and it's an irrefutable proof that it was produced at that time. And it also builds a permanent trusted audit trail with permanent records that can be actually imprints of not only documents, but also metadata, process steps, or any kind of digital files you may use in your daily work. Together with other colleagues who were interested in the technology, we started reflecting on how we could practically use it. So we had several workshops, and we shortlisted some use cases that were particularly important or particularly interesting for us. So with the proof of concept, we implemented 2 use cases for audit. one that concerned the audit of EU-funded trainings, and another one that concerned audit in the domain of agriculture, in particular wine promotion with Alpha Estate. We also thought we could apply this system to public procurement with two different facets. Public procurement at EU institutions, but also procurement at EU beneficiaries. And the last use case was about the ECA publications. We said, why can't we use this tool also to protect our own publications? So I'm not going to show them all in details, but we are going to give you a feeling and a demonstration about them. So let's start with audit. The scenario we imagined is a scenario in which the Commission services, the managing authorities, and the beneficiaries of EU funds use this system to notarize systematically and in a decentralized way files that might be relevant for audit. So all the contracts, invoices, and supporting documents are notarized straight away. And then they can share these registrations with the European Court of Auditors. Now, as you can imagine, this adds a layer of trust in the documents that we receive, because we may receive just PDFs, but with the systems we can be sure that the PDF has been untouched since its registration. And it's also very important for time-sensitive documents. I pasted a screenshot here from the tool and highlighted one specific document from the use case. It's a presence list for a training. This is a time-sensitive document. It makes sense to notarize it only on the same day you produced the presence list and you deliver the training. That's the only way you can then guarantee that nobody afterwards can come and add a signature 2 days after or even 1 year after. So if you think about it, in audit, this really adds a layer of control and trust that can really speed up our activities. Now, I would like to run a demo. I'll show you how the tool works, and we will take on now the use case audit in the field of agriculture that we have done in collaboration with Alpha Estate. So maybe Kostas, if would you like to introduce it?
Into the framework of this project, this co-funded project, we had to deliver through various phases of this project to deliver paperwork, and through different phases sometimes the same paperwork had to be repeated again and again for the various audit layers. So this kind of material was like a report of the actions occurred, some invoices, expenses, the payments for these invoices, and so on and so forth. And then the financial reports and all the payments requests to the ministry and the audit control of the ministry, because into this project there are the Ministry of Agriculture that audits the physical part, and another organization that audits the economic part. And let's say 80% of these papers are identical. And we have to provide to each one of them different set of papers. This is, of course, extended cost and extended administrative effort. And this is what we wanted to make into this project in order, once these documents are scanned and proved, that can be repeated and be accessed, other words, in a secure way.
So what you are going to see here now is how this process has been implemented. So we are talking about a totally decentralized procedure. And the procedure is like this. Alpha Estate, in this case, they have all the documents that they want to register as auditable documents. They can log in the system in their account. They can upload all the documents and register them on the blockchain. And by giving explicit consent to the European Court of Auditors, the European Court of Auditors can then go and check the same documents. So the first video that we're going to show you is if I am alpha estate and I'm putting all the documents on the registry. So of course, I mean, there is security that is involved there. So there is a specific account for the end beneficiary. So every end beneficiary has its own account, and what you see there is all the registrations that Alpha Estate already made. So they could be invoices, they could be any sort of proof that they themselves think that is important. As you see here, the information is available. So all the documents that are registered are available. Here it's a proof that some wine tasting happened in India. And there they decide to put whatever they think it's the thing that is required as auditable. You can also go even further and register typically invoices or other proof of delivery. There is always the possibility to fetch the content. There you see an invoice, for instance. And there, once they have registered, or at any point in time, they can go and appoint the Court of Auditors, as you will see there, as a potential registrar, which means that, as you have seen here, the Court of Auditors is able then, by explicit consent by the beneficiary, to go and grab the documents. Okay? So this is GDPR compliant, and it's extremely important because it works both sides. Alpha Estate can give consent for documents that are already registered, but also the European Court of Auditors can register documents that are immediately visible to Alpha Estate, which means that if you have an on-site audit and you have additional documents from your auditors, they can also be uploaded and put directly into the account of the end beneficiary, which means that there is no ambiguity on what information you hold versus what information they see. Okay?
Okay, so the step 2 of the same use case, and I will play this one, is related to the Court of Auditors, of course. Then the auditors will open the tool from their point of view, the ECA Registry, and they will go and fetch these documents. So here in the registry you have a menu where you can, for example, select the statement of assurance, browse down until the transaction, and then select the beneficiary for that specific transaction. And there you see all the documents that the beneficiary has notarized through the system. You see proof of deliveries for promotion events, invoices, and a set of other supporting documents. When you click, you can view them. So this is a key point, because we said that the documents are kept in a private cloud, in a separate storage. So Alpha Estate has given us access directly to this storage. So we can see the content of the document and also the related registrations. Now, you see the table is quite simple. It's just title, type, and create a det. But the idea would be to evolve the tool, add more metadata so that it will be easier to find these documents. Now, this is the invoice that was shown on the other side. And this is the registration page with imprint, registration timestamp, and all the metadata at the bottom. So this is how it works. So to sum up, for this use case, we saw several benefits. First of all, the system guarantees the integrity of the documents. So you receive a PDF, but you have a system to prove that the content is genuine. It has not been altered. It is possible then to ensure or give assurance that a certain time-sensitive document has been produced before a given point in time. And as Kostas was mentioning, well, we could have a reduced administrative burden on the side of the ODT. The once-only principle, so they would just notarize this document once and then open the registrations to whoever is auditing them. It can be us, or it can be even the Commission. And in case of a widespread adoption of this type of tool, we can envisage also faster and fully digital audits on our side, because at a certain point you could trust a PDF as much as you trust a paper original. So this is something we could envisage for the future. The second use case is about public procurement. For public procurement, we made a mapping of all the different phases, but we concentrated for simplicity only on one phase, the submission. And why? But because if you read the rules of application of the financial regulation, when it talks about the tool that you need to use during the submission phase, this tool needs to guarantee the integrity of the data and the exact time and date of the receipt of tenders and requests needs to be determined precisely. So these are the two things that the tool can do very well. So we said, okay, let's imagine a scenario in which, first of all, the call for tender is notarized, so the content is guaranteed throughout the entire process. But also, when bidders participate to the tender, they notarize their offers and the supporting documents. So in a way, they are preserved through the process, and they also get a timestamp that proves that they sent them before the deadline. In addition, the registration is also the proof of submission. So you can simplify a lot of steps. Then, of course, you can apply this notarization technique also to all the other phases. But if we look really carefully at this, you could have a fully digital, notarized, and verifiable procedure with a lightweight tool. Now, the Commission has already very sophisticated tools to do this, e-tendering, e-submission. So in this case, probably this tool could just simplify some modules. But for smaller players, the value would be great. Imagine an NGO receiving EU funds and having to run their own procurement for a project. Well, they could use this lightweight system to notarize everything and have a perfectly auditable process without a big effort. We can also envisage more transparency vis-à-vis the citizens, because all the imprints are recorded on the blockchain, and they are visible by the public. If you would disclose as well the metadata, they would be able, for example, to see that for a certain procedure, 5 vendors have sent an offer. They could see also the type of documents they sent. They could see that they sent these documents before the agreed deadline. So they could even follow some elements of the procedure and assess the regularity. So this could improve the transparency of the public administration and, in a way, bring more trust to the institution, even if we say that we go towards a trustless environment. But, okay, by adopting this, people would be able to verify what happens and trust more the institution. This is an overview, helicopter view of the previous 2 use cases. This is the scenario we imagine, in which we have beneficiaries, action coordinators, regional agencies, all the actors that are managing EU funds that notarize the relevant documents through the registry. The registry writes on public blockchain, and on top, the European Court of Auditors uses actively this information to perform audits. But also the other actors, the Commission, other institutions, and even the citizens, they can all look at this, verify what happens, control. So it's a window that gives transparency to the process. Now, the last use case, the ECA publications. Well, we live in an age of fake news and unreliable sources. So we said, maybe we could use this tool to protect our own publications. We imagine a scenario in which we would use the tool to notarize our reports as part of the publication process. The registration data would be publicly available, and anyone could verify the authenticity of a report that maybe they found on the internet or they received from a third party. So I will hand it over to Dennis for a demonstration.
So the scenario that we have implemented is a scenario whereby all the publications of the Court of Auditors could go through the notarization process before they are put on the website. So at any point in time, any document that can flow on the internet, sent by email or not, can be checked for its check whether it is genuine or not, and if it has been altered after it has been published by the European Court of Auditors. So the way that this is happening is that when we actually publish the document, as you see, there is a check mark blue there that shows that this document has been registered on the registry, on the blockchain. So by clicking on that, you can see all the proof and the registration of this document on the blockchain. So there is no way that a document has been altered after it has been produced. Here you see the registrations on Ethereum, and there is the registration on the Bitcoin blockchain. So you can all verify when this happened on several public blockchains. And from the point of view of the, as you see here, from the point of view of the verification, you can always go and fetch the content, as you see here, and the content itself, as you see the document, you can always, at any point in time, go back in the tool, put the document in, and verify whether it has been registered or not. So there is a verification of existence possibility, and there you can take any document that is produced by the court, upload it, and when you check it, you see that this matches a given registration that already happened. So there is no way that this process could be faked. And actually, okay, we managed to do it, so we'll show it to you, an attempt to fake a document. So what we're going to show you here is that, okay, it's a malicious intent of having a PDF that is downloaded, and the modification that happens, it's very difficult to distinguish. We're going to add actually a white box inside another white box, which is no way that a human can distinguish the difference. Okay, so the thing that we do is that we are going to pass it through the tool, and as you could see, when you upload and you check and you verify the authenticity of this document, there's going to be an error saying that there is no document with such content. So it is 100% bulletproof. So that's it. Then you can protect all your publications. There's no more fake news from the Court of Auditors.
Good. So to sum up, for this specific use case, well, the benefits are quite straightforward. So we protect the content of the content that we produce. We give a chance to citizens or interested stakeholders to verify documents that they found on the internet. We can certify the metadata, and another less obvious aspect is that in the context of open data or Creative Commons, if we give other stakeholders the possibility of reusing our content, well, we can first certify what is the original content. We notarize it, and then they can do what they want with it, but we can always prove which one was the original. So that's the end of the presentation. Sorry. Just to sum up the benefits that we see in terms of our field of work, where for EU institutions, we see this as a tool that can provide an additional layer of trust in the documents and can be applied to many different processes. We tested some use cases, but we are sure that there are others that can be also implemented in the future. It can give greater control, compliance, and accountability. For us, it would mean a much faster way of working and possibly fully digital audits. We could protect key documents, and overall we would have a positive return in terms of image. For the beneficiaries of EU funds, we would have also some advantages. We think that this could give the possibility to have an auditable by design process with a very light tool. That this could reduce the administrative burden on them, and we could even use it to have a more reliable, notarized exchange of information and communications between us and the beneficiaries. For the citizens, well, they would see a more transparent EU public administration that they would probably trust more. Just don't forget that this is a working prototype, but there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to work, as I said, on metadata, but also on many other aspects. This tool is anyway open to new use cases. We have a one-year license with unlimited registrations. So if you have an idea on how you would use this tool to improve our way of working, well, just send it to us and we will implement it. Now, I give the floor to Angelos Iatridis that will present us the perspective of a new beneficiary.
So, I'm Angelos Iatridis, winemaker, co-owner, co-founder of Alpha Estate, a winemaking company. So it's not so often I make such kind of presentation in front of European Court of Auditors. So for me, I'm used to make wine tastings or masterclass about Alpha Estate. So can do next time. So let's give you the point of view of a beneficiary company and explain you in a few words what is Alpha Estate. Alpha is initial letter of the Greek alphabet. It's a very strong term concerning in Greek slang. And since 1997, Alpha Estate established the Alpha Estate company established in 1997 and produces state-of-the-art wines, having export in more than now 35 countries all over the world. We are two partners, Makis Mavridis, who is the vine grower, and me. I'm a winemaker. We own 180 hectares of vines. We are estate-growing wines, and we create a unique and worthy wine, so able to express with clarity the windy, the sandy, the high altitude, and surrounded by lakes appellation of Amindon, where is located Alpha Estate. Amindon is located in the northern part of Greece. It's the most continental part of Greece. Our vineyard is located in two plateaux, in different level, in a high altitude, 600 meters and 700 meters above sea level, with a lake in the background. So Alpha Estate is a small enterprise, around 40 people, and turnover of 6.6 million for 2016. Our forecaster will be 7.5 for 2018. We're vertically integrated. It's a privately owned and estate-grown grapes, and a relatively newly established winery. As I told you before, we're founded in 1997. This picture, I took it yesterday, before I left the winery. What is winemaking in Greece? It's a highly resources demanding challenge because of the long-term, it's a long-term investment. Vineyards, imagine that you set up the vineyard today and the first crop, you're going to have it after 3 years, and with aging, that makes you 5 years. Having an idea what is the whole procedure of winemaking. So infrastructure, buildings required, and machinery. What is all that means? Capital. So the EU funding initiatives since the beginning have been an important development tool for the company. So that helped us a lot for development of our business, investments, risk reduction, and opportunities to enter to different markets all over the world. There are some inevitable hidden costs due to the procedure required, the proposal submission, the implementation, order for action incurred, Ministry of Agriculture, audit for expenses and payments. It's the Greek institution is OPKP, secondary level audit to audit all the above, and higher level audit to audit all the above, etc., etc. Is it needed? Yes. But we believe there is a smarter way to do this, and this is the case of blockchain. So we want to reduce our human resource involved, reduce economic resource involved, and at the same time make all transactions immutable and therefore quality-driven. What is the project with Compelio team for the ECA pilot project? Add value to our interaction with national and EU governmental institutions, add more transparency, and with improved and simplification of all administrative procedures needed. We have primary information shall be recorded and secured as soon as it's created, is a unique, immutable, and long-lasting way, and then distributed intact to all institutions involved. This is what we do in our vineyards. We have a satellite multicoloring imaging. This is what is called precision viticulture, coming from precision agriculture. Of course, meteorological station, underground irrigation station called RDI, regular deficit irrigation. In the winemaking process, we're based in a BMS system, building management system, Visio grape scan and wine scan, and other technology that helps to take the best grape from our vineyards. So we are in Greece one of the iconic wineries and producers, and this is the reason why so fast we have more than 30 export markets. Short-term benefits, cost efficiency by both human and economic resources, transparency and traceability, and both internationally throughout the company and externally to all institutions involved. Long-term benefits. This kind of procedure can reflect, promote, and enhance alpha state brand values, the added value. And this can be easily understood and acknowledged by our customers as well. The wine is one of the first food that related the production area, the ecosystem, to the product. So this blockchain is what we are doing every day to our procedures. So, going to the wine, we have a primary information from the ecosystem and the grapes of the area, secured into a bottle, then can last through time, and finally provides us with the pleasure and utility of this preservation. This is our area is an ecosystem. It's a EU protected Natura 2000. You see a bird photo here. from this harvest. So thank you, and I hope next time we're going to have a tasting. And of course, you're all invited to Amindun, to Alpha State. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much to all of you. And I start by saying that for many of us, blockchain was a mystery. And I hope that now you have a better idea about it and about what it's all about. So, are there questions? Please.
Just a question about what you presented. You presented the complexity of this system and the price to pay for having this complexity in terms of computational burden, in terms of the overloading of the information. But at some point you said that databases stores very little data. So it seems to me a bit contradictory. Could you please clarify a bit?
Yeah, of course, what I meant there is, well, the database is an ever-growing list. So it doesn't make sense to store huge amounts of data in that context, because it will stay there forever. So at a certain point, the size of the database will explode. But on top of that, as you said, to secure a blockchain network, you need a lot of computational power, a lot of calculations. It's very resource intensive. So also the cost of writing data in a blockchain is very high. So you would never use it to store a big amount of data. You would just use it to store the minimum that you need, that needs to be preserved and that needs to be secured. Because of course you need to consider that there are transaction costs every time you write. So you don't want to spend a lot of money just to write a long video on a blockchain. This is the concept.
Juan Carreras from DGI Tech from the European Parliament also. Excellent presentation and I think excellent product. I'm very happy to hear this. I am a very practical person, so I will ask specific questions. My concern is also about the complexity of the network. You talk about node, you call the nodes for it. So my question is, how many in this proof of concept, how many nodes do you have and who are the nodes here? And I have a second question, maybe the more important one, where I can get a bottle of your wine here in Luxembourg.
I go for the unpleasant answer and Angelos can give you the pleasant one. So your answer about the nodes is 0. You don't need any node in this. So we're using public blockchains, which means that what there is we have implemented, it's an interface between traditional systems and public blockchains. So it is a middleware. We translate whatever we receive and we get it and we store just numbers on public blockchains. We're using 4 of them. So Bitcoin, Ethereum before the DAO, and Litecoin, which is 85% of all the traffic of cryptocurrencies for the moment. So it is not like a private blockchain where you have to install things. Actually, you do not need to install anything. The only thing you want is you bind the libraries. It's a REST API. Sorry for the technical things. So it is just an interface between your existing systems and public blockchains. You don't need infrastructure. You don't need to do any sort of mining. You don't need to create anything that has to do with all the permission blockchain.
Based on your experience, which is the ratio in, because my concern is the complexity of the network, so I already did say it, which is the rate of the number of nodes, the complexity of the network, and the benefits, and the security, the performance, which is the, if we double the number of nodes, we double the security, or it's more, which is the rate?
If I understand correctly, your question is about the public blockchains that we're using. Okay, so if you go to the Bitcoin, you have the biggest one, the largest ones, Ethereum, the same thing. So here we are relying on the nodes that are already out there, and we're talking about thousands of nodes. But this is not something that, if you have this solution, or if you don't have this solution, this network exists. So the only thing we do in the context of the Court of Auditors is that we are registering massively, which means at millisecond response time, any sort of data that you pass through this API. And we have massive scalability. That's one of the challenges that we have to solve. You know that usually public blockchains can only register a couple of tens or even hundreds of thousands. In our case, you can have multi-million calls if you want. We have sub-millisecond response time, so you can do as much as you can, even with a financial system which is much heavier than the database systems or the document management systems that you might have in a public institution. So basically, that's one of the challenges. What we want is to have something which is very thin, very light, that hides you the wallets, the Ethereum, the Bitcoin that you have to usually own. Nothing of that actually it's hidden behind our stuff. So the only thing you do is that you have an API and you see hashes registered on 4 blockchains, public blockchains.
Other questions? Please, Gaston. Yeah, the reply to your most important question, sorry.
So I give you the most important answer now. Unfortunately, in Luxembourg, we don't have any agent, but this market is feeding from Brussels. So you can Google, you can find all the data in alphastate.com, and thank you for the publicity.
Next week we will be in. Next week I will be in Brussels, so we will get one.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this very interesting presentation. I have a question, perhaps for Mirko or other speakers, and this is concerning privacy, because I've understood that privacy is an issue because one of the strengths is that you many actors are involved. This is also the idea with blockchain. But privacy is an issue in the sense that, for this example, the company can decide what to do. But what if it concerns data from other persons? And what is then done? Because apparently I've read also issues about that for blockchain you need to develop also an identity management plan. Can you tell something about that? Thank you.
Okay, I can answer at least to the first part of the question. We may manage personal data within our documents, but the documents do not go out of our private storage. So the documents are kept here. What goes on a blockchain is just the imprint. So it's the code generated by a calculation starting from those documents. So for a person who does not have the original document, it does not mean anything. So there is no data on a blockchain. There are just codes. So the key to decode this information and to link it to the original document is with us. So that's not an issue. So I think, do you want to take the second part?
Yeah.
Micro.
One of the primary things that we had to, at the same time as scalability, to solve was the GDPR regulation. And one particular aspect of it, which is the right to be forgotten. So that has been implemented in the solution in a sense that all the sensitive information stays outside the blockchain on any protected private cloud that you might want. It is a decision whether to store, where to store all this content. So in the case of the Court of Auditors, it stays inside the premises of the Court of Auditors, behind the firewalls, always. So when you erase the information about the document, the only thing that remains on the public blockchains are numbers that mean nothing. Does this answer your question?
No, I've read on the application of blockchain, for instance, in healthcare, and that by doing that you actually cut out a number of intermediaries. But healthcare is by definition privacy sensitive. And to share that then between them, you might get into trouble because then you need to share private information. But what is the assurance that that is not then going outside? And that is the concern. So it is about people who are able to look beyond the codes. Thank you.
Okay. So, in terms of the accessibility to the information, there is explicit consent to all the parties who access the information. So it is, if something is yours, you decide who can has access. And this is something that is, even in the case as we have demonstrated, you have to explicitly give consent to the Court of Auditors in order for them to be able to access the documents. And this is generalizable. So you have to give explicit consent to others so they can go and fetch or write on your behalf. Now, the use of blockchain, because the way that it has been implemented here is not necessarily the way that you could read outside. The peculiarity of the specific solution here is that first we need to integrate with existing systems. Nothing leaves the firewall outside, so nothing goes outside the premises of a secure infrastructure, and there is explicit consent whenever information is accessed. Okay, so these are three fundamental aspects that have been taken care of in the implementation.
I would maybe add just a last element, because you were talking about people who can make sense of the codes. Well, with this solution, we write only the imprints, the hash codes of the documents, and it's mathematically impossible to come back from that code to the original document. So there's no way those codes can be used in any way if you don't have, even if you have the original document, you cannot do anything with it. You can just verify that it corresponds. But so that's the answer. Okay, well, there was planned a coffee break, so we are now going to do the coffee break. That will give you an opportunity to exchange. I just want to finish with an anecdote, a real one. We completed our pilot in June, and the first week of July we went to Brussels to an event organized by the European Parliament, in which we have the opportunity to discuss with Mr. Riassi. She is the Chief Information Officer of the United Nations in New York. And then she started the discussion saying, I'm just coming from the MIT. So I just flew from Boston, I was at the MIT. Because, you know, the problem we have at the United Nations is we have so many websites and we have so many documents everywhere that we don't know anymore, and we can never guarantee what is the document is our original document. We have lost traceability of that, and we went to the MIT to check whether blockchain could solve the issue. You cannot imagine the faces we had in that meeting around the table when we were just completing what you saw here about securing the information on our website. So thank you very much. Now we go for the coffee break. I will ask you to have a very, very short coffee break. Yes? Can we go back 25? Only 15 minutes? Huh? The rest is going to be equally interesting.
I think there are still colleagues that are not there. I will ask you all to please sit in your places so we can continue the afternoon session. I don't know if somebody is still in the coffee, but in order not to finish too late, I propose that we already start. As you know, there is a small cocktail afterwards, so you can just network and just talk to the colleagues at that moment. So now we are going to move forward to the second part of today's agenda. That will be also as interesting as it was the first one. So I want to welcome Giovanni Sartor. Giovanni is part-time professor in legal informatics at the University of Bologna and part-time professor in legal informatics and legal theory at the European University in Florence. His research interests include legal theory, early modern legal philosophy, logic, argumentation theory, modal and deontic logic, logic programming, and many other things. So, please, Giovanni, the floor is yours.
Very much. Okay, welcome. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, and I have enjoyed very much the presentations today, and in particular the achievements that have already been obtained. In my presentation, I'm going to address smart contracts, which is something that I think rightfully the Court of Auditors decided to leave aside, at least for the moment, but smart contracts are raising a huge interest and appear to be the development, maybe the most promising development of blockchain systems. Let me start shortly reminding you what is a contract, and this is the definition taken from the draft Common Frame of Reference for European Private Law, a huge project that was meant to provide a European Code of Private Law. Then it did not really deliver, but it is a basis for legal comparison and debate. So a contract is an agreement which is intended to give rise to a binding legal relationship or to have some other legal effect. It's bilateral, multilateral, legal, juridical act, which is any statement or agreement implied, expressed, or implied. And then you have what are the effects of a contract. Parties are free to make a contract and to determine its content, and then a contract is binding for the parties, but it also has the effects that are established by the law that may be complement or even be against the will of the party. What is a contract? In general, from a philosophical perspective, is an institutional act. The parties declare their intention to achieve certain legal results, and the law recognizes this intention. It makes so that what they declare becomes true in the legal domain. This is a famous philosopher, Adolf Reinach, who provided maybe the first philosophical analysis of contracts in this framework. So, simple example: two people, Titius and Gaia, declare that Titius sells to Gaia his car for 2,000 euro. What is the outcome? The car no longer belongs to the seller, but to the buyer, and the buyer has the obligation to pay 2,000 euros. And similarly, you may have a future contract where Titius buys from Gaia a foreign exchange future, let us say for euro 100,000, at $1.250 for each euro in 1 month time, and then after the month, if the value of the dollar in euros increased, then Gaia will be obliged to pay Titius the difference, and if the value decreased, then another obligation, the opposite obligation, will be triggered. So Titius will be obliged to pay Gaia the difference. This is how contracts work. They are acts through which we change the legal assessment and create new obligations. let us have what is the interaction between the law and the contract. The contract produces the effects that the parties have declared, if it is valid, but the law may intervene, deny the validity to the contract as a whole, or deny the validity of certain clauses, or it may establish effects of the contract that were not agreed by the parties. For instance, in consumer law, this is a typical domain where this happens. Consider a consumer's power to withdraw from an online sale. Or it may also establish good faith obligation and compensation if the parties do not behave appropriately. Now we move into this new creation that also goes under the name of a contract, the idea of a smart contract. And let me try to specify what this idea is. Usually this Nick Szabo, a cryptologist and having an interest for law, is also mentioned that in the 90s introduces this idea, a set of promises specified in digital form, including protocols within which the parties perform on their promises. So the idea is that the implementation of the contract should be expressed in a machine processable form, and this implementation should be delegated to the technology. In this way, contracts could be exist, let me say, also in a way outside of the legal system. It was an idea related to a kind of crypto-anarcho-capitalist perspective to some extent. But as an example, Szabo gives this a vending machine where you put the money, and as a consequence the machine determines a change in the allocation of possessions. You get the drink if everything was well, and the machine gets the money. And obviously the machine gets, not the machine, the owner of the machine gets the ownership of the money, and you get the ownership of the drink. If you pay through a credit card, there is no money. There is a transaction, electronic transaction, that goes from your bank to the bank of to the seller, and in the same way the drink comes out of the machine. Things have changed when we have come into digital environments where much more complex processing can be done automatically than in a mechanical environment. And there you have some definitions of what is a smart contract. According to Wikipedia, a computer protocol intended to digitally facilitate, verify, or enforce negotiation performance of contracts. They allow the performance of credible transactions without third parties. These transactions are trackable and irreversible. This is what typically happens, as we shall see, with smart contracts on the blockchain, on the distributed ledger. This is another definition in a recent book on the law of it is the law of blockchain, that's something similar. Digital computable contracts where the performance and enforcement of contractual conditions occur automatically without the need for human intervention. So instead of the machine distributing drinks, you have a computer program that does the same way. It changes the possessions or the entitlements of the party. Another definition in a recent paper, digital self-executing contracts. Then there is some criticism of smart contracts. This is for the economist Nouria Rubini. Smart contracts are neither smart nor contracts. They are not smart because they are extremely buggy, and they are not contracts since no courts can enforce them. This points to the connection between smart contracts and judicial enforcement, and legal contracts, which are obviously judicially enforceable. But then let us move on an infrastructure for smart contracts, and the most popular one is Ethereum. And on Ethereum, the notion of smart contract is extremely broad. It covers any kind of software that you can put on this blockchain. So a contract is just a computer program and data, that resides at a specific address on the Ethereum blockchain. This is an example of a program that just says hello when you execute it, and this is also a smart contract in the Ethereum definition. But smart contracts can also in Ethereum, as we shall see, can also implement legal transactions. And there is some antecedents. Their antecedents are what is usually called EDI, cioè electronic data interchange between companies. Many companies have agreed to make exchanges according to standardized documents that contain machine-readable contractual data. So there are standards for expressing purchase orders. So when a computer system on the purchaser sends this message, the computer system at the other side will understand it as a purchase order and will be able to process it automatically. In this case, just some data are exchanged and automatically processed. But when we move into smart contracts, a lot more is done. Let us, I think we can skip these slides. There has been a lot of work on modeling contracts in logic or in a computable way, but this is a kind of parallel research that doesn't go into smart contracts as we know today, even though in the future I think these two lines of research, modeling contracts in a formal way and the smart contracts, are going to converge. So smart contracts on the blockchain are software permanently registered on the blockchain. They are executed by the infrastructure once they are often payments are in cryptocurrency, which means that payments can be directly executed on the infrastructure. There is no need for human intervention once the contract is activated, no possibility to erase the contract, and also no possibility to impede further execution unless foreseen by the contract. I put the slide, the image from Dr. Strangelove, because in that case, in order to achieve perfect deterrence, the bomb was automatically launched under certain conditions. And here we have in order to obtain perfect execution, similarly, it is not possible to stop the program for functioning unless this is established in the program itself. So what is really a smart contract? Now we are able to focus on this idea. So there is an address and the software on the blockchain. In Ethereum, a participant in the net, there are two kinds of nodes. There are nodes which are usually humans, but not necessarily, which include a couple of keys, a public and a private key. The public key works as an address, and then there are addresses which are instead contracts, which are going to contain software. Users can create contracts. In this case, a new address is allocated to the contract, and the contract is stored. Then messages can be sent to the contract, to this software, and they're going to be processed according to the software itself. The software works autonomously, independently of its creator, unless it contains instructions that enable the interference. So the software is an autonomous object that works by itself. It may, however, enable intervention by its creator or also by third parties. So it's not possible to have a software that allows for termination from external termination. And it redistributes assets, cryptocurrency, tokens, whatever, between the parties according to its internal logic. Sorry. Let us see some examples. So you may have a contract that performs an escrow contract between two parties. which is linked to a purchase. In this case, you have two parties that don't trust each other, and they want to be able to make an exchange without invoking a third party, such as provider of credit cards or debit cards. How would they do? A party sends money to the contract. The party cannot withdraw. The contract is built in such a way that the party cannot withdraw the money that she has sent. The only thing that the party can do is to forward the money to the other party, which would be the seller. In this case, once the first party, party A, has sent the money to the contract, the seller can feel safe enough, can trust the contract in this case, and send the money, because the seller knows that the other party cannot have the money back, and at that point, what is most convenient for the first party, at least to preserve her reputation, is to forward the money to the seller. There is no incentive on behaving differently. Another example, consider a bet between two parties. What would happen in this case? The two parties A and B send the same amount to the address of the contract, and the contract says that the two parties, neither party can withdraw the money as soon as both amounts have been received, and if happens a certain event, then the contract will send all the money to A. I don't know, the Milan wins the next football match. If the event does not happen, then the money is sent back to, all the money is sent to the other party. And similarly, you can have futures, you can have crowdsourcing, you can have digital autonomous organizations, modeling companies or other associations or structures. This is particularly where new coins are issues, the so-called ICOs. Insurance, you can have deals dealing with stocks and bonds. Physical tokens that stand for shares in physical properties can also be sold. I cannot go on, but there has been an interesting research on the various kind of smart contracts, how they are present in different environments, and also on the different function that these smart contracts, broadly understood as any kind of program that can be used in this way, can perform. Obviously, there are many smart contracts in this broad sense as software stored on the blockchain, having their own address and responding to external stimuli that do not qualify as contracts according to the law. Those that qualify as contracts, we may wonder whether they are lawful and what kind of legal effects they produce. So there is a smart contract may not correspond to a legal contract. There may be, it may just be a mechanism that does not implement a transaction between parties, a vote which is meant to be not binding, or it may be a mechanism that is linked to a legal contract, maybe just to perform an offline contract already in force, for instance, cryptocurrency payment may be performed at a certain date, maybe using an escrow mechanism. Or it may be a mechanism that both implements and expresses a contract in some sense. So, in real case, digital tokens representing entitlements, and so it does more or less the same that a contract in the traditional sense is supposed to do. So you may wonder what is the relation between legal contracts and smart contracts. There are important differences. The contract is meant, the legal contract, traditional legal contract is meant to generate institutional results, create, modify, transfer rights, powers. These outcomes are integrated or modified by the law and subject to judicial review. And the smart contract is a mechanism in itself that creates a computational process over the blockchain. Each party somehow accepts to trigger the smart contracts, and in a certain sense you may say that there is a consent, and the outcome corresponds to the results that the parties, at least usually, has intended or at least accepted. The outcomes are determined by the software and subject to no review unless legal remedies are introduced, which is something that is now being discussed or exists already, but we need to interpret the law in such a way as to apply it also to smart contracts. So what does the smart contract do? If it introduces, obviously it adds to the ledger. As we know, a blockchain can only be extended. The past cannot be changed. And sometimes it requires an external computation that is triggered through a registration on the blockchain. For instance, apparently a smart contract for renting a car or for selling a car can, in this way, trigger that the car is blocked when a payment, an installment, is not paid on the smart contract. So there is an interesting connection between what happens in the physical world and what happens online. There are obviously great opportunities. The costs for performance are reduced since the performance is to a large extent automated. This is disintermediation. Exchange between strangers can be trusted in the sense that both parties trust the contract, as it happens in escrow contracts, and the exchange may work even if they don't trust each other and there is no third party intervening. And there is certainty to some extent because you know that the result will be the outcome of the computation that have been programmed. There are a number of legal issues have been raised. What happens if a contract is invalid? Legal contract can be invalid if they are unlawful. For instance, a contract creating the obligation to perform a crime. There are missing formal requirement, duress. A party was threatened in order to make her conclude the contract, mistake, incapacity. So a smart contract may support transactions that are legally invalid, or it may include abusive, unlawful contract terms, as it may happen with consumers. How to prevent the creation of smart contracts or how to eliminate their effect is a challenging issue, considering also the anonymity of parties. Often the parties are anonymous. And compensation for damages of reversal may happen, but they may have to happen. They may to happen off-chain, outside of the blockchain, since without the consent of the party at stake, no change can usually take place in the blockchain concerning that party, unless the party agrees to a contract changing her entitlement. Then there is the problem of interpretation. What happens if the outcome of the contract is, or the processing is different from what the parties expected? I finish. 5 minutes? Okay. Everybody, I think, knows of this very important case. There was a very large crowdfunding which raised 150 million for a number of enthusiastic members, and an attacker discovered the weakness. So if after adding some funds to the system allowed people to withdraw the money they put on the fund, maybe with a small fee to be paid. But somebody discovered that if requests to withdraw were very quick, it was possible to withdraw multiple times the amount which had been put in the fund. And in this way, it was possible to, let's say, to steal all this money, to empty the fund. But this was an effect of the contract. So if the idea was that code is law, this was, nobody could really complain about this outcome. And as you know, in the end, Ethereum community decided to cancel, to make a fork, to change retrospectively the blockchain in order to eliminate to cancel the effects of this operation. There are other legal aspects. I think my time is running out, so I'm not going to, such as the need to adapt contracts to changes in the relation between the parties, or to have many contracts have open standards without delay. The contract has to be executed in due time, and similar open concepts. So I think I will stop here. Another important issue is determination, obviously. If the law allows for contracts to be terminated under various circumstances, smart contracts in principle cannot be blocked unless they allow for that. So, to conclude, there are great expectations, but a number of issues to be solved, and I think these issues pertain to the connection between smart contracts and the legal system. I believe that the law of contract can also be applied to smart contracts, even though they are contracts only in a very special sense. New technologies can be developed. An important aspect will be both better languages for expressing the content of contracts, and also smart agents that will be able to interact with smart contracts. So this merge of artificial intelligence and the smart contracts. We will see what happens, but there is, however, the need to protect weaker parties, in particular consumer protection law, and to enable also the achievement of public goals through the regulation of private interactions. The regulation of contracts has the purpose of protecting the party, but also to achieve some public objectives. How to do that with smart contracts is a challenging purpose, and we should achieve this goal, obviously, without breaking the blockchain, which is a promising technology which we all want to see prospering in the future. So thank you very much for your attention.
As we are running a bit late, I propose that now we go to the last presentation, and then we run a last question session. So I want to welcome Ellen Kopman. Ellen is Deputy Head of Unit for Digital Innovation and Blockchain at the DG Communication Networks, Content and Technology at the European Commission in Brussels. The unit elaborates policy initiatives and the digital single market to support digital innovation, blockchain, and growth of startups, and include Startup Europe, ECT standardization, and innovation procurement. She has a master in physics and electrical engineering from the University of Linköping in Sweden, and Helen joined the European Commission in 2003 after a thorough industrial experience in management of ECT services. Ellen, she's going to present European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, the European Partnership in Practice. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Magdalena. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I'm very happy to be here and listen to all the interesting work that is going on in the European Court of Auditors. I'm going to talk to you what we do at the European Commission on blockchain, which is for us as well a very exciting area, although we are in the midst of all kinds of technology coming at us. We think that blockchain is one of these game changers that you have maybe one opportunity to get onto and get in the right way. So one of the things that we have done, now we see if we can click here, we don't have to, I think, dwell so much onto what the opportunities and possibilities of blockchain is anymore. We've heard about that, and we've seen it in practice in one of the examples as well. But one of the things that we think we need to do now is to grab these opportunities in Europe, and together with the European industry and the startups, the innovators, and as well as the public services, to grab this opportunity. And this is why we have put together this European blockchain partnership. This slide, you can see the details here, but it shows a little bit about the different use cases that we see around taking place in industry in all kinds of different sectors. You have it in mobility, especially in the supply chains and logistics sector. We see a lot of work in the financial services, in medical institutions, in the terms of e-health and health records and so on. And we see a lot of investment going into blockchain right now, whereas perhaps for public services institutions, we see a bit less of investment. It could be definitely improved, I think, on the public services side. We see much more on the industry side. But we see also a very vibrant startup community, and specifically in Europe, I think we have a very good strength here to build on and create value for our citizens. So at the Digital Day this year, 10th of April, we signed a declaration on a European blockchain partnership together with then 21 member states in Norway, which today is signed by 26 member states in Norway. So almost everyone aboard now, and we are in no doubt that all member states will come aboard this partnership when we go along. And the purpose of the partnership is to work together towards the potential of blockchain-based services for the benefit of citizens, society and economy as a whole, but particularly then looking at what we can do for public services. The partnership is there to help establish Europe in a leadership role in all aspects of blockchain. So we want to exchange experience in this partnership and cooperate towards public services that could be of benefit for the member states' own public services and their citizens. And at the same time, looking about the opportunities to actually establish a blockchain services infrastructure, whatever that infrastructure entails, to create a platform for cross-border public services. Now we have gone on and recognized the potential then of blockchain as a transformative digital service, and we want to now continue to work with the industry as well, and we'll tell you a bit more about that later. But why would we do this? Why would the Commission and the European member states even think about putting together a partnership like this and do a blockchain services infrastructure? There's so much out there already. We have heard about the different providers of blockchain services and infrastructures as well. This is because we have identified some areas that is not yet solved by the service providers on the market. This is, for instance, that we want to have this service infrastructure and the public service industry as the provider of the most advanced cybersecurity standards that is out there today. It should be completely energy efficient, to be scalable, to accommodate all kinds of different use cases, and highly performant in forms of speed and throughput, and as well being able to ensure continuity of service on a long term. One of the aspects as well that we are looking into quite in depth right now, I was in a workshop yesterday, whole day, that we looked on digital identity and how the concept of digital identity in the future, how you can yourself decide about your digital identity, how that could be incorporated in blockchain services. And here also we have our important ECA regulation that we would like to see how we can integrate into those services. So these are the components of this future blockchain services infrastructure that we would like to put in place, which could be a development of some of the providers are there today, but it could also be something new that we create together with our innovators in Europe. So what we have done in the partnership is to first focus on some cross-border public services that have substantial possibility and could have impact on the citizens. And we have chosen those use cases. For the moment, we have three to four use cases that we look at in more in depth. And one of them is the very prominent example that we've seen today from the European Court of Auditors that has a lot of potential, we believe. And we're also working with the DG Taxud to look at value-added tax exchange of information for duty goods. And the third one that I can mention is around the diplomas for to certify diplomas when you you need to get an employment abroad or do further studies abroad. So those are very impactful use cases that we already have identified that already has been worked on, and we would like to be able to scale up and make available to more member states. And even though the European partnership is now with the member states, we envisage, the vision is that this will go be open towards industry and private stakeholders as well. The funding, as we see it now in the short term for this European blockchain services infrastructure in the first phase will come through the Connecting Europe facility. Connecting Europe facility is already a mechanism there to supply services as you also use yourself. I think, like we mentioned, we have discussed over lunch e-signatures, but we have all the e-procurement and all these other services that it was already being made available through the work through Connecting Europe facility. And this is the perfect match with the initiative we have here to actually also then look at how can we use blockchain to provide these services on top of the existing infrastructure and architecture that is already there under Connecting Europe facility. And we also then drawing up a vision for the next multi-annual financial framework that we all work on right now. How could this be financed in that framework? And we have made a proposal for a Digital Europe program, which is focused specifically on digital and addressing the lack, or I would say under-financing of certain technology areas in Europe if you compare to other regions like Asia and the US in areas such as artificial intelligence and blockchain. So this is one of the key components in that proposal for the next 7 years. And then we also heard already earlier from Dimitris very much talking about the European Parliament resolution. This is a very good support and giving us even stronger mandate to work on these things. And we see that the European Parliament and to their stakeholders and national audience is also very much supported to this. On top of the blockchain resolution that was taken on the 3rd of October, there was one the other day in the Trade Commission committee in Parliament that also put together a resolution to support blockchain for supply chain services. So, and this is indeed very much fitting with the progress we see in the industry, that supply chain is one of the key areas of application. And we are, in that work, very much aligned with the Parliament. I will go on to talk about another initiative that we have together with the European Parliament. We launched this EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum in February this year, and this is a platform to establish contacts with all stakeholders around in Europe that works on blockchain. So it's an open platform. Anyone can participate. It's a community building mechanism as well as sharing expertise and knowledge very, very broadly. And the first thing that we did in this observatory was that we mapped the existing blockchain state of play in Europe, and the map of that is available on this website of the EU Blockchain Observatory. You can see there's something like 1,600 initiatives going on in Europe right now. Those can be networking initiatives, but there are also concrete products and services coming out from startups and industry as well, very prominently introducing blockchain in the real production. So this is a good place to start if you want to find out, what's happening around Europe. And what we also do in this observatory forum is we have established working groups with experts from Europe and beyond to look at two things. One is the regulatory framework, how apt it is to actually accommodate for the new services that we think will come out of blockchain. And the purpose of that work is to create legal certainty around blockchain and the regulatory framework so that industry can feel more confident in actually going forward with implementation. And the other group in the forum is looking at specific use cases, going in depth and having interviews with actors here that have had proof of concept and asking about the maturity and the learning experience from that. So all this is now being exchanged on this platform. As I said yesterday, we had a whole day of work on digital identity in this forum, and it was very, very interesting with a deep dive really into what is digital identity mean in the future, how important it is to own your own identity, concepts of self-sovereign identity, and also how can that be accommodated with blockchain and integrated with things like eIDAS. So it was very important work, and from that we will also produce some reports, and this will be published on the website. So the report on the digital identity will come out, and you can already look at another report, and we heard a lot of discussion this morning about GDPR and blockchain, which is like an eternal discussion, is always coming up when you talk about blockchain, is how is it compliant with GDPR. The forum came out with the report on exactly that topic, so you can go to the website, and I really recommend you to read it to understand the issues at stake, and it also lays out some paths forward, how it is compatible and what you should avoid to do and so on to be compliant with GDPR when you work with blockchain technology. So this is the one that I just mentioned, and there the sort of what can capture the discussion is that blockchain and the GDPR may look like enemies, but really they are like frenemies. So it depends how you see it, but definitely it's possible to use blockchain and still be GDPR compliant, as we saw with the example this morning. And one of the solutions is simply just not put private data on the chain. So that's very simple, but there are other ways as well. Okay, so just for the backdrop here, the FinTech Action Plan was also adopted this year. It's a pro-innovation agenda for financial services. And we look at also here regulatory framework to enable new financial services to come to fruition in the market. We look at cybersecurity concept together with financial services. There was a passporting of crowdsourcing crowdfunding that was also adopted together with this action plan. And the action plan set the foundation for the work we do now with the blockchain strategy as well. So it's very important work, and many work streams coming out of this FinTech action plan that also touches on blockchain. So this could be interesting also to follow. One of the things here is the regulatory sandboxes area, which here could be of much use in the area of blockchains to bring in the innovators and talk to regulators together, and through examples, through real life examples, check how the regulatory framework actually fits for purpose, and have the regulators and innovators dialogue, so they can explain and then perhaps adapt their products in a way that is compliant. So it's another way of creating legal certainty, very interesting, that we also look at. Just to name a few other strands of activity, standardization, very important here. Interoperability is an issue that comes up in every occasion. We talk about different blockchains. How are they interoperable? Will these blockchains live in isolation? What if they need to talk to each other? What kind of format would that need to be on? And this is work we do together with the ISO committee. We have a liaison with the ISO committee, and we do work together with them to identify exactly these things. In terms of funding, we have the Horizon 2020 program right now available for blockchain research and innovation. There's something like 80 million already invested in different research and innovation projects. It could go up to 200-300 depending on kind of the excellent proposals that are being put forward and actually addresses blockchain. But that's a real possibility today to look at funding opportunities. We work with the institutions and agencies like yourself, and creating these legal certainties through the Observatory Forum. And then I would just like to mention this, which is could be very interesting for your constituencies as well, is the investment fund that we are about to establish now for both artificial intelligence and blockchain. So it's a fund of about 100 million euros that we will make available for startups to finance their real bankable projects for go-to-market services based on blockchain. We will set up a platform for this investment fund during the next year, and it will be a very interesting opportunity for our innovators as well. Besides the Digital Europe program, we also have Horizon Europe, which is the follow-up of Horizon 2020 proposal that will address blockchain as well, together with all the other very important global challenges and technological challenges that we have in front of us. And not the least, that we have this also, we touched upon a couple of times during the day, how important it is with skills. I think it was mentioned by Companion or some other speaker today that there are very few people actually knowing how to program, for example, smart contracts and how to deal with blockchain. So this is something that we have to ramp up in terms of the people coming out on the market, in universities and the younger people in startups and so on, to actually bring them into and bring value into industries. So we will have proposed quite substantial funding for skills development for artificial intelligence and blockchain and other areas in the Digital Europe program. So just to give you a little flavor of what's going on, and I would like to, I think, round up with a prolongation, and an idea that we are working on right now, we can share with you, is to set up some sort of multi-stakeholder association. It could be a sort of a mixture of what the Blockchain Observatory Forum are doing today and what we are doing with the partners in the European Blockchain Partnership. But we think that it would be good if such an organization established in Europe and has a legal identity in Europe, and that we can make it very open and global, but still have the initiative for that organization in Europe. And this is a vision right now with objectives, with important policy interactions and dialogue with other services right now to understand what such an organization would entail. And we want this to be very flexible and open in the philosophy of the blockchain development as well. So I would like to finish there. I think we are catching up a little bit at time. I could mention some of the timelines. I think I already talked about this. So in blockchain, we have a very short time span. I mean, it's you have to adapt continuously to what's happening out there. But for the next 2 years, we know very well what to do in these different work streams: European Blockchain Partnership, the blockchain service infrastructure, the Observatory Forum, as well as this new multi-stakeholder alliance. So I think we have our work laid out for the next couple of years, but we are ready to adapt whatever happens here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. So we are running a bit late. We have just time for a last question, if any. If no, we want to... Christine?
It's not a question, it's just a comment. As responsible of publications, I know that there is a movement in all the institutions to go for reusability of all documents, of official documents. And there was always the fear for the reports, if we upload it in open data portals, then the vast Creative Commons will be used. So that means remixing, remingling, recreation, whatever. And it was always the fear that maybe reports might then be prepared that are not correct ones. And I think it was well explained today that this project with blockchain could then help solve this situation. So that was my comment.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I think it's time to close, and I give the floor to Eduardo Ruiz, that is going to share with us some conclusions.
Well, more than the conclusion, I think the day was quite long, so I will try to be brief. So first, I would like to thank you, all of you, for assisting to this conference, and I would like to thank Mr. Brinkman for his support. I think that demonstrates also how committed is the institution in this initiative. And I have a particularly thanks to Mirko, to Spiros, and to Magdalena, because I think they make it possible. It was a kind of dream, and we make possible that participate in this very innovative initiative. Just before this session, we have a short discussion between all of us, and during the discussion there was I heard a very nice ideas that some of them, a few of them, I would like to share with you. We heard about, for example, this concept of exponential organization, that an organization that is able to run and to grow faster and to adapt faster, no? And then there was mentioned that it was necessary for us to adopt artificial intelligence, blockchain technologies, and similar things, no? So I think that's something to bear in mind, and not just for be innovative per se, or for a kind of fashion, no? I think that is necessary to deliver more value for the citizens, no? Because this blockchain technology is linked to transparency, openness, trust, but it also will help us to be more efficient and will be more effective in the control, in the audit. And then it's clear that that will be good for us, but it will be also good for the end of the chains, no? For the final beneficiaries, for example, that are confronted sometimes with very cumbersome and bureaucratic procedures that are very expensive, and at the end with the European citizens. So I think that for the court, participating in this type of process is the first time that we are part of, I don't know if you call it a kind of a startup. So it's very good. It's very good that we experiment, and I encourage you, and that you have other ideas or other similar initiatives that you believe that could be useful for the court and could add value for our citizens. Please do not hesitate to let us know, and if we are able to do it, of course, we will try to do our utmost to put it in place. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduardo. So we are about to complete this session, this conference. I thank again all the speakers for the very inspiring contributions. I also want to thank myself, all the organizers, particularly Spiros Pilos, because Spiridon, he was the one that was organizing and working very hard, and unfortunately he couldn't be here today with us because he's in Brussels. And I want to thank all the rest of the people from the ECA Lab that are working very hard in order to experiment new technologies for audit. And the event will then have been possible without the excellent contribution of professional training, events management, logistics, and catering teams, and I thanks for making the event to run so smooth. And finally, I thank you all for your attention and active participation. Now we have our cocktail outside. I hope you can stay for a while and we can exchange some words about and some impressions about the day. And I would like to finish with a quote. It's from Alan Kay, an IT person, that said, "The best way to predict the future is to invent it. Let's hope we are inventing our future together." Thank you very much.